Good morning, everyone. So, we're a few minutes after 10. I was wanting to wait a little bit, seeing those who couldn't quite figure out where we were located to arrive. Has everyone actually been able to check in at this table right up here? So you basically signed in that you've been here? If you haven't, please do so. Put a name tag on so that I and everyone else around actually knows what to call you. But we'll get started here in just a moment. So, quick introduction. I happen to be Brian Michael. I'm the vice president here at EA 690. We do have one other chapter officer, Randy Epstein, here in the blue shirt, similar to my blue shirt here. He's our chapter treasurer. There's also a couple other chapter members throughout the crowd, a couple of us are pilots as well, so we'll be basically introducing ourselves a little bit, kind of giving our own personal, here's why we're in aviation here in just a moment. So, kind of give you a quick program outline. I don't know if y'all can see that screen. I'm just going to use it more for me to kind of talk to point-wise. But we'll do a little bit of an introduction as to who we are as EAA and the local chapter. So there has to be a national and a local version of EAA. So I'll go a little bit into that. Why do we fly? So I've got a little bit of a video for us to play. So basically, just a little entertaining, get in the spirit of flying, get us all ready for it. And then I'm going to go into what it takes to become a pilot. So the cost involved, the actual time dedication, what you can do after you get your pilot's license, all those kinds of details. That's what I'm going to get into then. And then after that, how to get into flight training. So finding a CFI or a flight school, or how do I go about getting this pilot's license? And we've actually got flight school representation here, and I'll kind of let him give a little bit as to how you would get involved with his school. And then after all that, as you can see, we've got a little bit of a lunch thing going on, so they'll be ready about lunch-ish time. And we'll get in airplanes, and we'll actually do a little flying. So hopefully that sounds good there. So let me start with a little housekeeping. If you hadn't noticed, the bathrooms are over here, so you'll see there's a refrigerator that says public restroom over there. Feel free to get up at any time, walk around if you need to. Do have, I think there were cookies somewhere, but there's drinks and chips and such. You can go ahead and get that as you feel the need to. Also, let's see, we've already done the sign in, and the goal today is to walk you through the process of what it takes to get your pilot's license and for you to be a pilot. Fly. So, start off with a little bit of who we are as EAA. So EAA was founded in 1952, I believe it was, by a guy by the name of Paul Poporesny up in Wisconsin. I think he lived in Wisconsin. It may have been Illinois. But he decided that he wanted to get those of us who were building airplanes in their garage a little bit of a support group. And so what he came up with was a national organization that had little branches all throughout the country. And we just happened to be one of those branches here. This particular chapter is the local chapter here for Gwinnett County. There's several in the Atlanta area. We've been around since about 1980, so going on close to 37, 38 years. So been around for a little while. We've got all kinds of chapter members. We do all kinds of things with regards to aviation. We have a very strong presence in youth education. We've got a lot of things where we try to do with kids, such as our Young Eagle program. We do that every third Saturday of the month, where you come out, kids between the ages of 8 and 18, we get them in an airplane, we'll go fly around Stone Mountain or Lake Lanier or somewhere interesting to go see. When you come back, we'll get you a certificate, also a ground school certificate, so you can go online and start looking into what it takes to be a pilot as a kid. So we also have other programs that we do with kids. We also offer scholarships for kids who are looking to actually get their license and need a little bit of financial assistance. And that's another thing that I'll get into a little bit later, is how do we as an adult get some of that financial assistance as well. Let's see. Randy, I was going to say, what else do I need to comment on with regards to us as a chapter? We do all kinds of events here. Every first Saturday we do a pancake breakfast. It's pretty much a lot of food. We got sausage, biscuits, pancakes, you name it, eggs. It's all for about $7, and we have a lot of people come out and enjoy it. Some people will fly in their airplanes to come out to do that event. We hold chapter meetings every once in a while. Sometimes we will have an aircraft come in from our national organization, which is a B-17 bomber or a Ford Trimotor, or maybe a DC-3, and we'll actually offer rides in those aircraft. So we as a chapter like to support and help as ground crew and make sure that everything runs smoothly with those. We also try to get out in the public, so we know that there's maker fairs and such. So we have little demonstrator type of vehicles that we'll take out, and we'll kind of get a little bit more public understanding of what it is to be involved in aviation. We also offer a summer camp for kids. I think that's between the ages of about 14 to 18, maybe 12 to 18, I'm not sure exactly, 12 to 18. So we do that in the second week of June generally. So we as a chapter do all kinds of activities, and part of that is so that whenever you as a pilot get finished with your training and you're looking for something to do, come on back to the chapter. We will give you something to do. For sure, we've got Young Eagles every single third Saturday, so we want to get as many pilots involved with that as we can so that we can fly as many kids as we can. So that's a little bit about who we are. Yes, we are a community of passionate aviation enthusiasts, and we're wanting to spread that passion to others. And we are interested in growing aviation. So, any idea how many pilots there are in this country right now? The number is actually not very big. So the United States population is somewhere like 330 million, maybe 350 million, that range. There's about 400,000 registered pilots. So if you become a pilot, you're in the 0.5 of a 0.5% or something like that. It's a very lucrative group to be a part of. So not a lot of us doing it. And unfortunately, the number keeps dwindling. So if you're interested in like a commercial aviation career, the airlines are hiring like you wouldn't believe. In fact, you probably know better than the rest of us as far as the number of your CFIs that keep leaving the school because they keep going off into the airlines, because the airlines are just hiring out, and they're actually charging pretty good rates at this point too. So it's definitely a possible career path for some of them. Let's see. A little bit more about EAA as a national organization. We have certain government advocacy groups. There's a lot of times you'll hear about people wanting to close down an airport in the local area, or trying to get medical legislation through, or that kind of stuff. So our national group kind of represents us in those efforts. They also like to do events and activities. There's a large event that they do at the end of July every year, which is called AirVenture. I think this past year there was like 11,500 airplanes that went into the airport up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. About 500,000 visitors. You could do just about anything with regards to aviation there. There's flights, there's looking for aviation, if you need parts for your airplane, or if you're looking for training, or if you're looking to buy an airplane, or just want to hang out with friends. All that's available up there at that event. Knowledge and information resources. All the information that I'm presenting here today actually came from our national organization, so they provide all kinds of additional support beyond what I'm able to give you today. And if you need to, come back. Join us in other chapter events. I'm almost always here. So if you got other questions, by all means, come up and ask me about anything. If I don't know the answer, I probably know someone who does. I've already talked about Oshkosh and our chapters. So inspiring new participants, Young Eagles, kind of gone into that a little bit. The Eagle flights, that is what we'll be doing this afternoon, or after lunch at least. So the Eagle flight is where I or another pilot gets you in the airplane. We'll fly around for 30, 45 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer. get you a feel for what it takes to be a pilot. What is it like to talk to air traffic control? What is it like to land at a towered airport or a non-towered airport? How do you do cross-country planning? How do I know where I'm supposed to fly? How do I know that I can't fly in this area? All that kind of stuff is what we'll kind of go into as part of that flight. Let's see. Already done that. Check. A little bit about the chapter network. So there's actually 1,000 EAA chapters. So just like this one here. And here in the Atlanta area, I'm aware of probably 4 of them. I know there's one in Covington, just south of us. There's one in Peachtree City. I think there's kind of one over in the Cobb County area. Don't know how often they meet. But there's chapters all over the place, all over in the Atlanta area. And there's plenty more all throughout the rest of the United States and overseas. So if you happen to go to Australia, there's probably an EAA chapter nearby. So why join a chapter? Well, one, we've got all kinds of people to help out. Let's say that you bought an airplane and you don't know the first thing about how to maintain it. Well, we know who to get in touch with on how to maintain your airplane. If you buy one, you're not technically allowed to work on that airplane unless you happen to have an airplane and power plant rating with the FAA. And that takes all kinds of class work. You guys spend years in classes and actually get that rating. So as an owner of an airplane, you have to have someone like that every year check out your aircraft. So a reason for being part of the chapter is we know how to get you in touch with those kinds of places. It's just a social group. If you want to come out and hang out, people have like-minded interests. It's a great place to be, just to kind of socialize a little bit, do a little hangar flying, which means sit here in the hangar and talk about flying as opposed to actually being out there doing it. Let's see. So I don't know how well you can see that picture, but that happens to be a picture from 2014 of AirVenture. You can kind of see the number of airplanes and the grounds up there. It's a huge event. So definitely fun to fly into or just hang out, get up there. So a little bit about us. This slide's now out of date. It's just last night we changed our monthly meeting date. But as far as our local chapter, we do things with home builder groups. People who are building their own airplane, we provide support for them. The Young Eagles programs, our pancake breakfast and such. All right, so before I get into that, I want to play this video.
Flight, humans' endless quest to fly. To fly, freedom to pursue the dream. The pilot, the person fulfilling the dream. Is this your dream? Is this your wish? Is this your desire? It is. It's time for you to realize, I can do this.
I can't tell you what a thrill it is right now as I look over this airplane on my schedule, on my own time. Freedom. That's what flight's all about. Going where you want to go, when you want to go there. I've dreamed about this my entire life, so I can't tell you what a thrill it is that I'm going to hop in this airplane and go for a flight.
Baby, let's go. Clip up. You know, it took some time, took a little money, a little bit of work, but it's well worth it when you get to taxi out on a morning like this and take to the skies. All right, here we go. We're flying. Now this is where the freedom really kicks in. I want to go over there, head up this way, fly around the lake, go to my friend's landing strip. Anything I want to do. This right here is the ultimate freedom.
Experience the world the way only a small portion of the population has ever viewed it. For thousands of pilots, a dream come true. With almost 20,000 airports in the United States, a flying facility and its teaching resources are near you. Those resources may range from a flight school at your hometown airport,
There you go. Fantastic.
a private flying club in the area, or maybe even a local EAA chapter. Every month, more and more chapters start an affiliation with a local flying club. This is where you'll find the answers to the questions, how do I do this? What will it take? For years, the mistaken belief was that to become a pilot, you had to have a lot of money. That couldn't be farther from the truth. We'll show you ways to keep the cost of flight in check. Your local EAA chapter is a great place to start asking the questions you have, and they will have the answers you need.
People think that it's going to be something that's beyond their financial capability or beyond their time capability, and you just do it a little bit at a time. If you start now, fly once a week, whenever you can, you'll end up where you want to be.
Aviation is a tight-knit community that welcomes anyone who is interested in flight.
There's always somebody there that can answer a question or help you with a project or help you get started if you want to get started flying. It's just a big family affair.
One of the most dynamic things about flying is the diversity of aircraft. Today, a wide world of aircraft and settings awaits you, the pilot. Pilots are as diverse as aircraft. All walks of life are represented.
Is this your dream? Because it was mine. Do you wish this? Do you want this? If I can do it, so can you. It's time for you to take your eagle flight, experience the magic of flying, and say, I can do this. I can fly.
So, a little bit on why did I learn to fly. So what this is, I'm going to have a few of the people in the crowd who happen to be pilots or at least training to be pilots and kind of give a little bit as to why did they get involved in aviation. Randy, would you mind kicking us off? In fact, no, I'll kick us off. I'll start off. So I got involved because I was doing a lot of travel between here in Atlanta and Tampa, Florida. I happen to be a software programmer. That's my day job. I needed to go down to Tampa probably every 2 weeks or so, and I spent a week down there and then come back. After doing that about, I don't know, 20 or 30 times, I said, you know, I could probably fly this airplane as well as the guy up front doing it. Why don't I go out and try it? Well, just happened to get married, and she said, no, you're not going to do that. But she ended up leaving and said, well, I guess it's time for me to go out there and do it. So my sister actually bought me a discovery flight. I came out here, flight school of Gwinnett actually, and took my first lesson and pretty much have not stopped since. So I've been flying about maybe 11 years now. This is my airplane, this yellow and orange one right here, so I've now owned that one. And I've flown it probably about 700 hours, and I've flown everywhere from Miami, Florida to Boston to Houston, Texas, and Wisconsin. Everywhere east of the Mississippi River, I've been in that airplane. In fact, just this past weekend, I went down to New Orleans to visit my father-in-law. It took me about 2.5 hours to get there, 2.5 hours to get back. Unbelievably great traveling airplane. I know when the airplane's going to leave because it doesn't leave without me. You know, I've got my wife in the plane with me. We happen to do a little crabbing down in the bayous down there. We brought back a cooler full of crabs with us. Just things you cannot do in commercial aviation. So having my pilot's license has been a tremendous benefit for me, just in my own personal way of doing things. Would you like to give just a little bit of how you got involved?
I think originally I got interested in it back when I was in high school, because I had a neighbor who lived down the street, flew for Delta. So after I graduated high school, I thought, well, shoot, let me go do this. So I took a few lessons at the local airport, and then I ended up going in the Air Force for 4 years. This was back in '71. Got done with basic training, technical training. I ended up in Gila Bend, Arizona. And lo and behold, there was a little airport there. A gentleman that had retired from up in the Northeast came down. He was an instructor and had a little Cessna to teach in. So I continued training there, and then my first son was born. That was the end of my flying dream until 2008. So 1972 to 2008. 2008, I got interested again, had the money available. My oldest son and his family live up in the Charlotte area in Concord, North Carolina. We've been making trips up there on weekends, 3.5, 4 hour drive. Why not? Let's go do this. So I went and I finished up. I started probably in February 2008. I finished up in December of 2008. So I've been flying for 10 years now. And it's been fun. It is very useful.
So I actually started being around general aviation through the Georgia Tech Skydiving Club. And I was at these small airports and traveling to airports to skydive all the time. And said, well, why don't I get my license and then I can fly directly to the airport. Instead of driving 6 hours to Florida in the winter when it's cold up here to skydive, it's a 2-hour flight. And so I actually taught the owner, son of a flight school here in Gwinnett. It used to be where Advanced Aviation is now. And he's like, yeah, come on out. And so started taking flight lessons. That was in 1999. So I've been flying for about 18, 19 years now. Ended up building my own planes. I enjoyed it so much. The blue and white one on the hangar on the ramp out there. And now travel with family. My wife ended up liking flying, so she got her license. She had no interest in aviation before she started flying with me. And we fly all of our family vacations. And it's just, the freedom to go when you want is just enormous. You don't have to, oh, I've got a flight at 2, I got to be at the airport at noon, and there's traffic, so I got to leave my house no later than 10, and am I going to get through TSA? No. It's like, okay, we're packed, let's go. Oh, we got there 2 hours early, or oh, we're 2 hours late. And it's just the freedom of going when you want, and the speed that we visit my parents about 5 or 6 times a year in South Florida, and it's a 3-hour flight. It's a 12-hour drive. So you didn't go for a weekend. You're not going to go drive for 12 hours for a weekend. And we can leave Friday after work, be down there for supper, spend the whole weekend with them, fly back Sunday afternoon, and go home. So it's just the freedom that it gives you. And just flying around the pattern even on a sunny day like today is a lot of fun.
You mind?
Actually, the Young Leaders is what inspired me to become a student pilot. My children were looking online and they saw that there was Discovery flight, so Brian Michael actually was the one that took them up. And the ironic story about that is I've never flown in my life, so I was terrified that my children were going to go up. So when they were successful, I thought, okay, if they're not scared to fly, maybe I should take the plunge and start doing it myself. So last year, in 2017, I did a discovery flight with a flight school out of PDK, and ever since then, I'm booked. So right now I have applied for a scholarship so I can continue my flight lessons. So this right here is just a continuation of my interest in flying. So hey, go ahead and go for it. You won't regret it.
Is this on? I'm Pat Bratton. I showed up there in 2003 with the pilot job. Because my wife told me I couldn't build an airplane because I didn't have a pilot's license. And I built a boat in high school. It took me 2.5 years. I figured an airplane would take me about 10 years. And she got worried when I started getting all this stuff in the mail from Europa. And I was complaining to a guy at work, and he said, well, it sounds like she gave you permission to take flying lessons. And I said, I don't think that's what she meant, but I went with that. And there were people from the 3 flight schools at that time here, and I wound up with advanced aviation. I brought them $600 for 10 hours in a 152, and by the end of 2004, I had a pilot's license. I was a pilot, a guy with essentially no money, kind of an ordinary 8-to-5 job, and 2 years later, the guy I worked with, he had a pilot's license, so we bought a Piper Warrior, and it's been really wonderful. You can go anywhere; it's about twice as fast as driving. Sometimes it's like 3 times as fast, like if you're going to Apalachicola, there's no road restrictions. We use it to go to a family reunion in Massachusetts every year, or every other year, and then to a Vietnam helicopter crew members reunion every other year. I've been as far as Albuquerque and Indianapolis and Massachusetts. It's a great tool, but I still wake up in the morning and think, gee, I wonder what it would be like to, fly an airplane. And then I remember, I know how to fly an airplane. The bank and I have an airplane. So that's my story.
Hey, good morning. My name is François de Fromont. I'm originally from France. Always wanted to learn to fly, but got married, had kids, and in France it was difficult. It's a lot more difficult actually in Europe than in the US to learn to fly. More expensive, less airports, less airspace. Anyway, I moved to the US back in 2002, and my wife said, hey, you always wanted to fly, you were in the US, we should do that here. So I got my license in 2005, and then started to fly, and then I got my instrument rating a few years later. Just got my commercial license back in June. I'm now working on my CFI rating to be able to give instruction here in the local chapter in the club. I also spent 2 years in Germany, and when I was over there I got my European license, because believe it or not, it's a different license in Europe than in the US. So I can fly in France and in Germany. I've been flying, all over the east coast of the US. We had friends in New York, so we would go to Westchester all the time with my wife and the kids. Been to Florida. Flew around Niagara Falls, beautiful place there. The Hudson River, corridor. Flew around the Statue of Liberty, which was a gift from the French. And flew a lot in the Alps, the last few summers in France. Beautiful place to fly. So anyway, my goal is to be a CFI before the end of this year. I'm making progress. Passed my written test last week or 2 weeks ago, and maybe I'll be training some of you, hopefully.
Well, I'm Bill Bell. I don't guess I had a lot of choice. My dad was a fighter pilot in World War II, and when I was 2 years old, he took me up in a Piper Cub, and the next year he bought a Piper Crop Pacer. Some of you may know that airplane. It's about like a 4-seat Piper Cub, fabric covered, and pretty turbulent and bumpy weather, but my dad didn't think about anything and jumping in the dry pacer and flying to Mexico or Canada or the Bahamas. So growing up, we just flew all over the place. And so when I was out at Georgia Tech, I took flying lessons, learned how to fly, and have been flying ever since. It's in the family. My dad's two older brothers were bomber pilots in World War II. In the 70s, Dad and I owned an airplane dealership at PDK. We sold a movie airplane for 3 years. And then my son came along. He was 3 years old when I bought my first airplane. I was a student pilot. I figured I'd just buy the trainer and then I'd force myself to finish the flying lessons because it seemed like something always came up. We always had a baby or bought a house, or you guys know what I'm talking about. Something always seemed to come up. So I bought the airplane, which forced me to finish the flying lessons. And after a few years of flying the trainer, it got to be a little too slow and too small, and the range wasn't quite enough. So I bought a little bigger version of the same airplane, and I've now owned that airplane for 35 years. And my son grew up with it. It was something that we did together for many years, which I greatly enjoyed. And as he got older, when he was in high school, we knew he wanted to be a pilot, so we bought him his own airplane. Not much of an airplane, by the way. You can buy airplanes for the price of a new car or less, so it was a think-a-toy airplane. But when he was at Georgia Tech, he flew 1,200 flight hours. So when he got out, he was able to get a commercial job fairly quickly. And today he's 40. He's got 13,000 flight hours, and he flies a 777, a 400-seat passenger plane in Hong Kong for Cathay Pacific Airlines. So whenever my wife starts to nag me about what the hangar rent costs, I remind her that our son makes more money than either one of us ever made. So it's a great family thing. When Billy got out of Georgia Tech, our father-son event for that next week was that we took the Grumman and we flew to the Bahamas, which is a neat thing to do with your kids. And I really enjoyed it, and the whole way down and the whole way back, he kept trying to tell me how to fly my own airplane. But that's what kids do. So anyway, it's in our blood. We've done it for 3 generations. I hope we can continue to do it for quite some time. My own father, who's still living at 94, flew his own airplane till he was 88 years old. And now I have 2 grandsons, and we're kind of hoping that they'll come. And my son has a nice Bonanza, so we're hoping those kids will come along and be pilots for the 4th generation.
Good morning, my name is Wes Riddick. I'm one of the youth coordinators here at VA 690. I started off at 9 years old. I was born and raised in New York, and I lived right in the flight path of Kennedy Airport. So I used to look up and say, wow, that thing's bigger than a rocket instead of getting flies. You know, so I had this mindset that one day I would be able to fly an airplane. And being raised in New York, it was tough to see people flying airplanes, especially people of color, flying airplanes, let alone being in the airport or anything, you know, in that environment in 1969 when I was 9 years old. But I decided I wanted to become a pilot at 9 years old. We were sitting in the classroom. You know how the teacher goes, "Well, Johnny, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I was one of those kids like, I want to be a pilot. And from that point on, I made it a journey to become a pilot. After I graduated high school, I joined the Air Force because my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. And so I joined the Air Force and went to school part-time while I was in the Air Force, and I was a jet engine technician, so I'm an A&P mechanic, that's a licensed technician, working on airplanes, United States registered aircraft. And I did 7 years in the Air Force, and I guess around my 5th year in the Air Force, I said, you know what, it's time to put that dream into play. And so I started working on I don't know if any of you know that back in that room, there's flight simulator programs back there. And believe it or not, that's how I started flying. I was at home, couldn't afford to go to the airport and pay for myself, so I bought a Tandy computer. I don't know how many people remember that. Okay. But I bought a Tandy computer, and they had a flight simulator program. And from that day on, I've been a flight simulator specialist. Okay? And so I actually learned how to fly on a simulator. And somebody told me, if you learn how to fly on a simulator, you can fly a real airplane. I said, yeah, okay, right. So, but I did. And I tried it, and I worked on it. And when I took my first flight, the instructor looked at me and says, you've done this before, haven't you? Because I was flying a flight simulator. He says, you're doing pretty good. You're a good pilot. And so, affordability kept me at the general aviation level, and over time, being an A&P mechanic, I joined Delta Airlines. I was a jet engine technician for Delta Airlines, and technical order now. I just harass people, they call me for that. And during that time, I became a flight instructor. So I'm a flight instructor, and what they call a CFI, Certified Flight Instructor. I also teach instrument. So I can teach a person from private pilot, instrument, commercial, how to become a CFI. And so all this started because at 9 years old, I decided I wanted to fly. Fortunately, I don't own my own airplane. I fly for groups here over at Advanced Aviation. There's a whole lot of airplanes I can play with. So I get to do that. So I started off at 9 years old, and it was a dream. And my dream has come true. And now it's my turn to share with other people. So I help people with the flight simulator here. I teach people how to fly airplanes. I teach people how to work on airplanes. I was also an A&P instructor. That's the people who, again, like I said, the A&P license is a license so that you can work on registered aircraft. And I became an instructor, and most of it was because I wanted people to see me, so that if you see me doing it, you can do it. That's how I'm staying in aviation for that reason, and this is my passion. Just like everybody in here, flying is a passion. Once you get bit by that bug, it's a different animal. Okay, and I love it, I enjoy it, I love sharing it with other people. Okay? Thank you.
My name is Bruce Buell. I own a flight school right over here, Advanced Aviation, and I guess should we open it up to questions? Yeah, well, let me talk a little bit about how you go about getting your private pilot license. That's the first license everyone gets, and it involves learning about avionics and weather and navigation and aerodynamics and various subjects on the ground, and it also involves actually learning to fly the airplane. It takes a minimum of 40 hours to get your private pilot license. This is according to the FAA rules. But 40 hours is really unrealistic for most people. It usually takes more like between 45 and 75, depending on a number of factors like aptitude and how diligently you apply yourself and so forth. The way the process works is you start out with an instructor. You go up and you learn how to do a pre-flight inspection on the airplane, how to manage your checklists, takeoff, landing, a number of maneuvers. And when you get to a certain point of proficiency, your instructor will sign you off for solo privileges. Then you'll solo in the airplane and you'll practice some of these maneuvers and things you've been doing with the instructor by yourself. At the same time, the instructor will take you into cross-country flying, which you'll learn to plan a flight from here to a destination that's more than 50 miles away. You'll evaluate the weather, make sure it's okay to go. You'll calculate how long it's going to take you, how much fuel you're going to burn, and various other things you need to consider when you're making your plan. And then you'll fly some of these cross-country flights with your instructor. You'll get to a point where now you can handle those by yourself, and your instructor will turn you loose to do cross-country flights by yourself. Then you'll get, we'll give you minimum of 3 hours of night flying, so you've got a taste of that. Some simulated emergency training in the form of instrument in case you stumble into conditions where you can't see where you're going. And then we'll get you ready for your check ride, which is your driving test. You'll go to a FAA designated examiner who's independent of the people that have trained you, and you'll demonstrate to that person that you are safe and proficient, and they'll issue you your private pilot license. So that's pretty much the way the process goes. Cost-wise, you're probably going to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 from start to finish. Give or take a couple thousand, could be a little bit more, a little bit less. But so it's it's not cheap, but most people can do it if they can figure out a way to do it.
foot.
Yeah, you want? Yeah, let me do a couple more of the fly, learn, fly. Then I'll go into a little bit more detail and kind of reiterate a lot of the stuff that Bruce just went over.
My name is Bill Miller, and my story is a little different starting out than a lot of people that were interested in flying from an early age. I never had any desire to fly in airplane whatsoever growing up. Didn't even enter my mind. Well, I had just gotten out of the service in 1965. My best friend growing up was living in one part of the state, I in another. And I kept getting these brochures from him all the time about $5 introductory lessons back in the 60s. Take the flying lesson. Well, I looked at these things and I said, what do I want to do that for? I don't want to fly. But him and his father were taking flying lessons. So we had arranged a get-together with the families this one weekend. So that him and his father came up, and the first thing they wanted to do is take me up to the airport. And they did. So they said, why don't you sign up for one of these introductory lessons? And you'll like it. So I did. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So I started taking lessons. And I could only afford at the time maybe one lesson a week or one every 2 weeks. Well, I was liking it. In the meantime, my best friend and his father had bought an airplane. They bought a Tripacer. Well, at that time, the GI Bill came out. And then I got real interested in flying. So I packed up my bags and went to Florida on the GI Bill. And at that time, the government was paying 90% of the training. So in 6 months' time, I went down there and got my commercial instrument, multi-engine, and my CFI was $3,000. But $40,000 now. So I became a professional pilot over the years. I instructed for a good many years. Then I became a corporate pilot, flew jets all over the world. And the end of the story is my best friend and his father, who got me interested in it, never finished their licenses. and I made a career out of it, who had the least interest in the beginning. So you just never know. But it was an enjoyable career. I've flown all kinds of aircraft and worldwide, and I enjoyed it. I joined the EA chapter here a few years ago to get kind of interested in it, because I quit flying about 8-10 years ago. Hadn't done anything after I quit flying corporate. And I got interested here, and I'm going to get checked out again. I just got a physical a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to try to do some flying. But it's a great career. This time, the opportunities are endless. If you look online, there's some sites that show all the pilot jobs. There's pilot jobs everywhere. When I was growing up, you couldn't get a job unless you danced and sang at an interview. Today, they're begging for pilots, so it's a wonderful opportunity right now for anybody wanting to go into a career in flying.
At least one more.
Hello, I'm John Morgan. I'm the Eagle Flight Coordinator here at EA 690. I just gave you a card which all the information on is correct, except we changed the chapter meetings to whenever we want them instead of the second Friday. And I gave you that card so that you can go ahead and pass it on to one of your friends who you want to go fly with you after you get your private license. So we'll get all of you going. As far as why I learned to fly, well, I can't dance and it's too wet to plow, so I decided I'd just go ahead and fly. I grew up in a very small town in southern Indiana with no airport. Wasn't a soul in my family that had any interest in flying whatsoever. And I was in college, and I got stuck in Indianapolis working a night shift, and I saw an airplane fly by, and I thought, well, that looks like fun. I thought I'd just take a discovery flight. So a couple days later, I went out to the local airport, took a discovery flight, and that was the end of that. I was totally hooked. It's no different than it was during that discovery flight than it was every time I fly over I-85 between PDK, where my little airplane is sitting out there sits, and right here where I spend about half of my life. And every time I'm going by, you know, I'm going at 175 miles an hour, and all the people below me that could buy and sell me 12 times over are going 10. So that gives you an incredible feeling of, God, this is so cool. How can anybody not want to do this? I mean, I'm 71 years old. I just got my instrument rating. I had a commercial rating for 50 years that I never used because I had poor eyesight, and I knew I couldn't fly in the military or for the airlines or anything else, even when I first got my license. But it's just, I don't know. I don't want to give it to the kids. I want to use it on my own. I educated them, put them all through college. I gave up flying for 25 years just because, you know, things get tight. I thought I couldn't afford it, but I was totally wrong. I spent more money on a country club than I would have on flying. I could have joined a flying club. I could have just gone out and rented from Bruce twice a month or something and just kept current, but I didn't realize that I could. So I hope all those of you who do want to fly, go ahead, and once you get it, stay with it and pass it on to somebody else. As Bruce already and everybody already said, there's tons of opportunities for flight jobs now if you're young. And for those of you who aren't young, the cost of flying, the FAA finally pulled their head out of their butt and decided that maybe they ought to make safety an issue that doesn't cost the same, where you treat a Cessna 172 the same as a Boeing 777. And now we're starting to get less cost avionics into the airplanes. I mean, I just spent, I don't know, $10,000 possibly redoing my panel and mine, and it's every good as what they would have spent $500,000 on a jet airliner. So they're finally getting real. It's going to be a lot safer. We don't have to fly around water towers anymore to figure out where we are. But you know, other than that, flying is the same way now as it was in 1967 when I started. So anyway, I hope you all pursue this. It's very worthwhile. There's all kinds of things you can do after. Even if you don't want to pursue a career, you can do angel flights, fly hospital patients around. You can fly dogs around in the Pilots and Paws program. You can give back the way the people here do in giving flights to people like you that think they might be interested. We do all the kid flights, the Young Eagle flights. So there's a zillion things you can do in aviation without ever making a dime at it. And I strongly encourage if you've got a few extra bucks, spend it there.
All right. Is there any other pilots that want to, or do you want to say something? Well, I'll continue on then. So Bruce kind of alluded to. Let's see that. Let's see opportunities. So I'm going to kind of go into all the different kinds of flying that there is. And these are just examples of things that if you happen to be interested in one kind, then I'll at least prove that it's there. There are these kinds of airplanes out there. So let me start with factory-built airplanes. This one that you're looking at right here happens to be a factory-built airplane. It's built in 1958, but it's still built in a factory somewhere. There's several of those. In fact, several of the people here that you'll be flying with today have factory-built airplanes. There's light sport airplanes. Light sport airplanes have there's a certain weight limit to them, certain speed restriction to them, but you don't necessarily have to get a full-blown private pilot license to fly either. So that's another option. And I'll go into a little bit more details as to what it takes to become a light sport pilot in a little bit. So home-built aircraft. There's several of us in the room that have built their own airplanes. You can go at home, buy a kit, buy the plans, whatever, go to the aircraft supply store down in Peachtree City, buy a bunch of stuff, put it together in your garage, get the FAA to come out and approve it, and you can fly your own airplane. I happen to be building one myself, have been for quite a few years. Bill here is built, he built his a little quicker than I managed to get mine done. But there's several of them. The one that John's flying was built in someone's garage. So you can definitely build your own. Sometimes that's the cheaper way to go. Vintage aircraft. These are slightly older. I think vintage goes from the early 40s through the early 70s, maybe mid 70s. This one's 1958, so this one qualifies as a vintage airplane. I don't know if Dwayne's going to be flying today, but he has a 1947 Arup, I believe it is. So you've got all kinds of aircraft at different ages. Aerobatic flight. I'm sure most everyone's been to an air show. You've seen the guys going up doing the loops and rolls and weird stunts and such. That's definitely an option for you if you want to do that kind of stuff. Ultralights. Ultralights are, they have a slightly more restricted weight limit. Don't know if there's a speed limit to them or not, but the weight limit requires that they be, I think, under, what was it, 250 pounds or so, about that. You actually do not require having a pilot's license to fly an ultralight. I would suggest you get some flight training, but you don't have to go through any of the actual pilot training that the rest of us do. Soaring. You're into gliding. So I know that there's a glider school somewhere south of here in the Thomaston area, or they. Monroe's just a club, but there's a school also. There's a club over in Monroe. It's a little bit south of the east of us, and they actually will. You can buy into the club. I think it's $500 to buy into the club. All you do is you pay for the tow up, and that's probably $25, $50 or something like that. You could fly it all day long, 12 hours for that $25 or $50. So incredibly cheap way to fly. And if you're younger, you can get your glider pilot license a little younger there too. I think you're allowed to get your glider pilot license to be 16 instead of 17 that the FAA requires for normal pilot license. Is it 14? It's 14 for solo. I'm not 100% sure. Yes. And so we've been using these terms solo and check rides and so on and so forth. I'll get a little bit more into those definitions, what those mean in just a moment as well. Seaplanes. You happen to be in Florida somewhere. There's a whole heck of a lot of places to land on the water in Florida. They don't allow you to do it quite as much here in Georgia. Alabama does, I think South Carolina does, everywhere around us, but Georgia not so much. But seaplanes are an excellent way to get around, especially if you're going somewhere like Hawaii and you want to go from island to island. Great to have a seaplane rating. Helicopters. Did you know that there's a helicopter school on this airport? Happens to be at the far end over there on the other side of Gwinnett Arrow, but you can actually train in a helicopter. Now, granted, it's a little bit more expensive than the fixed-wing airplanes, but if helicopters are your thing, that's definitely an option. Hot air balloons. So, if you're a hot air balloon pilot, an interesting little knowledge fact there. If you're a hot air balloon pilot, you're also a CFI for hot air balloons. It just happens to be that there's so few of them, and in order to get that particular pilot license, in order to get the license to fly hot air balloons, you go through the extra effort of how you train for it too. So it's definitely not a lot of people in that field, but definitely an interesting one too. How many of y'all have been out to Arizona where they do the big balloon launch? Is it New Mexico? Okay. Yeah, so definitely worth going and seeing. And of course, you got corporate flying. Everybody's familiar with Delta and not Delta, but Cox Communications and Coca-Cola and Home Depot and all these companies that happen to have corporate departments. Definitely a great place to get your hours if you're wanting to go into a career with this. And of course, the big guys, the 747s and such down at Hartsfield, they all got started somewhere. This is pretty much how they all got started, was either here or in the military. So definitely something to do. So, becoming a pilot. So Bruce hinted at a lot of this stuff. So the certificates, there are actually more than this. These are the two big ones that everybody talks about at this point. There's still a recreational pilot. There's also other smaller ratings. Most people typically stick to either a sport pilot or a private pilot license. So, sport pilot. minimums are you have to have 20 hours of flight training to get a sport pilot license. You're limited to 2-seat aircraft, at least at the moment. There's legislation going through Congress and such to change all these rules, but at the moment the rules are you got to have a 2-seat aircraft. You're limited to daytime flying only, so no nighttime flying. Altitude restriction, you can only go up to 10,000 feet. Most of the airplanes you're flying in, that's pretty much as high as they're really going to go anyway, but you're restricted to that. The max speed is 138 miles an hour, and your max weight is 1,320 pounds. That max weight is fuel, the aircraft, all the people, all the luggage, everything. That's way less than that amount. Going over to the private pilot requires a little more training. You got to do 40 hours of flight training at minimum. As Bruce alluded to, you're probably going to take a little bit longer. In my case, it actually took me 100 hours. But I only came out maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, and it took me about a year and a half to get it all done. So no occupancy restriction. So I could fly this 4-seat airplane, I could fly a 6-seat airplane, I could fly a 12-seat airplane, so long as it's under 12,500 pounds total gross weight. Total gross weight means aircraft, fuel, oil, people, luggage, all of it combined. So I'm allowed to fly at day and at night. That's a special thing that here in the United States we are allowed to do that. You go to Australia and get one of their licenses, you're only allowed to fly in the day with a private pilot license. Here you can fly day and night. Altitude restrictions, 18,000 feet. You can get an additional rating, it's called the instrument rating, which allows you to go over 18,000 feet. But just getting your private pilot license, you're restricted to 18,000 feet. I'll get into a little bit more of that if you're truly interested into the reason why later. There is no max speed restriction other than what the FAA says are the speed restrictions. There is an actual speed limit below 10,000 feet and also within the Class Bravo area around Hartsfield. But other than that, you can fly your airplane as fast as you want to go. If your airplane can go 600 miles an hour, you can go out and fly 600 miles an hour. But below 10,000 feet, I think you're limited to 250 miles an hour or so. And then the max weight, 12,500 pounds. Let's see. So the types of lessons, there's ground school and there's the actual flying portion of it. Schools such as Bruce's, which is a Part 141, and that's the Federal Aviation Regulations section, is Part 141. So if you go and train with Bruce, he does it as Part 141 thing. He offers both the ground and the flight instruction. If you do a Part 61, which is a different set of rules, it's usually going to do that with more of an independent instructor. The ground school you can kind of do on your own. It just depends on whatever your instructor wants for your training. Yes?
Actually, we instruct on Part 61.
Oh, you do? You're not a 141 school? Okay.
The only difference between the two is the FAA does audit work on your flight keeps most of the records on the audit.
Okay.
It's more of a regulation issue.
Yeah, I knew they had a assigned syllabus you had to stick to, and there's...
It's the same type of syllabus, only we don't have the FAA tell us which lesson
Okay.
to take in what order.
Okay, well that's good to know. I didn't realize that. I thought you were a 141 school.
We were at one time, but we dropped it.
Okay.
It just wasn't working.
All right. As far as tests are concerned, whenever you go through all this training, there are 3 tests you're going to have to take before you get your license. One is a written test. Then you got to do an oral and a flight exam. And generally the oral and flight exam are done on the same day. They don't necessarily have to be, but most people do it that way. The written test you have to do prior to you getting to the actual oral written exam. The written tests are usually 60-ish questions. They keep changing it every other year, so I think it's still 60 questions. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to do the test. Hopefully your instructor will have gone through and actually made sure that you pass that test before he signs you off to be able to take it. You do have to have the CFI endorsement to take the written exam. And you also have to have the CFI endorsement in order to be able to do the oral and the actual flight test as well. The oral exam could be as short as an hour, it could be as long as, I don't know, 8 or 9 hours. It just depends upon your examiner. What the examiner is going to do is he's going to see just how much the rules and regulations and understanding of flying do you actually know. Just be aware of that whenever you're doing your training. You may want to ask your instructor a lot of questions with regards to, okay, what's the examiner going to ask me about? He might know your examiner. He might have a suggested examiner to send you to, and he might be able to prepare you a little bit better with that. And then the flight exam, you'll go out, it's generally about an hour long. You'll go out and do the basic maneuvers and such that you did during your training, turns around point, stalls, so on and so forth, and then come back in and you'll write your temporary certificate and you're a licensed pilot at that time. We'll go, let's see, so get into a little bit of the terms that we've been throwing around here. So, whenever you first start, your instructor is going to focus on the very basics. Being able to turn the airplane, climbs, descents, stalls. Stalls are actually not as bad as you think they are. They're actually quite docile things. Every airplane is capable of handling stalls, not immediately crashing to the ground. Takeoffs and landings, ground reference maneuvers, that's what when I said turn around a point, you're actually finding a point on the ground and turning around it. And in communications, you have to be able to talk to air traffic control. Get all those things down, your instructor will probably endorse you to solo. What solo means is you're the only one in the airplane. And you're going to take off, you're going to fly around a little bit, you're going to land. You have to do that 3 times. Once you've done that, we don't have any of them here. But generally, whenever you've done that, you're now endorsed as a solo pilot. And that in the aviation world is what we actually consider as you are become an actual pilot at that point. Because you've done it by yourself, you know how to handle it. Generally, as just a tradition, whenever you get your solo rating, or whenever you get your solo completed, the instructor will kind of cut your back end with your shirt off. It's kind of a symbol to say you graduated to the next level. There's a lot of history behind why we do that. After the solo, then you start getting into more of the cross-country aspect of things. So, understanding navigation, weather, flight planning. You get in the plane with your instructor and fly longer distances. There's a lot that goes into thinking about where you're going. You gotta understand the weather, where you're at, where you're at now. Also, where the weather's going to be like when you get where you're going, and everywhere in between. So a lot more thinking has to be involved. Once you've done that with an instructor, and you prove as good as you can do it, you're going to have to do it on your own. Then after that, you start refining your skills. You get into thanks to a lot of landing practice. You got to figure out how to do landing on a grass field, how to land on a short runway, normal landings, be able to do it within a certain distance, all that kind of stuff. And then once he figures you're good to go, he'll then give you your go ahead and get you your check ride with an FAA examiner. Let's see. Costs. As several pilots in the room had mentioned, like the country club, you can get your training done for a lot less money than you probably would have thought if you were to prioritize it. So you can buy a used jet ski or you get your flight training done, or you can go to Disney or you get your flight training done. So it just depends on what you're wanting to spend your money on. Some numbers, Bruce pretty much had better numbers, more realistic numbers. These are national averages types. And also the airplanes are, for these particular numbers, are like a 152, where it's going to have a lower fuel burn, probably a better airplane to train in, but you'll end up spending somewhere around the $8,000 to $12,000 range as far as getting your license. Let me get into, we'll go into sport pilot here as well. So sport pilot's going to be a little bit cheaper because you have half the number of hours that are required. Now this is all assuming minimums. Minimum number of hours, which is 40 for a private pilot, 20 for a sport pilot. So, how to train? You're the boss. So whenever you come out to a flight school like Bruce's and you train with him for a little bit, he's going to have an instructor, you're going to get a logbook, you're going to sign all your courses off him. So let's say all of a sudden you don't like this particular instructor that you're with in that particular instance. You've been flying with Wes. Wes is a great guy, but I'm not learning what I need to be learning from Wes. Well, there happens to be other instructors there at the school. You can switch instructors at any time. So you are the boss. You're allowed to fly with whomever you need to fly with to get this done. So don't feel like you're trapped into one particular person and like, okay, well, he left and he's now off in the airlines. So I'm done. I can't fly anymore. That's not the case. All that training that you've done, and you could have trained 50 years ago, that training still counts today. So as long as you've got it in the logbook, it's yours. You can continue to use it until you get whatever it is you want to accomplish. Let's see. Fly often. You're going to get it a lot cheaper the more often you come out to fly. If you come out 3 or 4 times a week, you're going to end up spending a lot less in the long run than if you do like I did, where I came out once every 2 to 3 weeks. I probably spent about $20,000 getting my pilot's license because I did it in a year and a half, and I didn't do it very often. The reason why is every time I came out to get in the airplane, I had to redo the lesson because I'd forgotten what I'd done. Whereas if you come out maybe once a week or twice a week, you don't have to repeat those lessons quite as much, and it ends up being a lot cheaper. Let's see. Also, come prepared. The aircraft is an expensive classroom. You do want to actually go through and do some ground prep work and understand what your lesson is going to be for that day. If you know that your instructor is going to have you do turns around a point, well, learn from ground books and such, and actually figure out what is a turnaround a point. What am I expected to be doing while I'm in the airplane? Then when you get in the airplane, it's more just the refinement of the skills rather than you trying to learn it all at that time. So there is self-study stuff. Generally, if you're going to do a school like Bruce's, you're going to have him give you the ground training stuff. I think you've got a preferred course that you would rather like people to go through, or you just let anybody do whatever, like a King school type thing?
We use 2 different ones. The Sporties is video-based, and then we have a textbook-based, and it depends on the person's learning style, which one they can choose.
Okay. So yeah, there's all kinds of other online things, and it all depends upon your CFI. If your CFI wants you to do a certain thing, well, maybe you take their suggestions. Some CFIs would be okay with just about any kind of ground school course, as long as it's kind of well known. There's several of them out there. And there's also YouTube videos and such, so just learn wherever you can. Let's see, landing spots. So this is the types of things after you get your pilot's license. So if you want to, you can own an airplane just like I do here, all by yourself. You take it wherever you want, anytime you want. You also have the responsibility of maintaining it. So you've got to deal with all the annual condition costs. You've got to deal with, if I get a flat tire, got to figure out how I'm going to fix that. All those issues become yours. But it's your airplane, you do what you want to on your own time. Another option is you want to do a partnership. So I know this airplane, whenever I bought into it, just happened to be a partnership. So John Morgan, myself, and a couple other guys, we actually own this airplane all together. Costs were greatly reduced. Anytime that we got anything fixed on it, it cost about a fourth, because he paid a fourth, I paid a fourth, another guy paid a fourth, so on and so forth. Just happened to be that one of us happened to be a A&P mechanic, so got our costs reduced there too, because he knew a lot of the maintenance stuff that needed to be done. But if you can get into a partnership, you kind of need to know your other partners. You need to be able to work well with them. If you get into a partnership where you just constantly are fighting with your other partners, well, now aviation is no longer a fun thing, and you kind of want it to be a fun thing. So get to know the person that you're going to be in a partnership with. Flying clubs. There's a few flying clubs. There's a really big one right over on close to Bruce's school over here called AeroVentures. They're probably around 100 members at this point. There's a lot of people involved in it. They've got several airplanes. Flying clubs allow you to be able to reduce your costs even more. You may spend $100 a month just to be in the club, but you get reduced fuel costs and you get access to an airplane. There's also FBOs and flight schools. So once you've done all your training, let's say you did it with Bruce, they'll offer the airplanes for rent afterwards. So if you want to not necessarily own it and let him deal with all the maintenance aspects of it, and he knows you've been checked out with him, you take that airplane, rent it, and fly it to where it is you're going to go, or whatever the cost he's willing to rent it to you at, and then bring it back and you don't have to worry about anything with regards to the airplane. So there's lots of different options as far as owning and operating an airplane. So these are examples of various flying clubs around. If you happen to be a Georgia Tech alumni, you have access to the Yellow Jacket Flying Club as well, which happens to be the same as AeroVentures. And then there's several different flight schools. Mentioned Bruce is here, but Flight School Gwinnett over there, there's ATP over there. Peachtree DeKalb has, I don't know, 3 or 4 different flight schools. So just about every airport has at least a flight school. If you're in the Winder area, there's Dragonfly Aviation over there. There's flight schools everywhere. Let's see. And then independent CFIs. So we as a chapter have several members that are just independent CFIs. They're not affiliated with a flight school. And you can get your license from ab initio to all the way to get it completely done with just you and one other person making your own arrangement. So all kinds of options. It all depends upon what makes sense for you, what your timeline is, what your desires are, the type of flying you want to do, so on and so forth. So that's what we're here to kind of get you started with is what kind of flying do you want to do? Try to get you in touch with the right CFI or the right entity to be able to get that kind of flying done. Let's see. So we've already gone into a lot of those. So at this point, because we're all kind of waiting for lunch, I'm sure, any questions? And I mean anything, because it's not just going to be me answering these. We've got all kinds of people here in the room. So if you've got any kind of questions about anything, as how you would want to get, well, how do I get from point A to point B, or just anything. Yes.
If your goals for the private pilot license, is it smart to hit the sports one first as kind of a checkpoint and then go on, or is it cheaper just to go straight through?
That's actually a good one, and I don't know that there's any right or wrong way to do it. If you do get your sport pilot's license, there's nothing to prevent you from going and getting your private pilot. You'll probably get your private a little sooner, just because if you've got your sport pilot, you're likely to have gotten the license, go off and do some personal stuff with it. Then whenever you come back to do the training, you get your private, you've already got a lot more experience in it, so now it's just more of a proving to the instructor that you've got the skills refined. You can then go off and do your check ride without as much of the training part of it. If you're going to, if you know you're going to do the private pilot from the very beginning, you might as well just go ahead and do the private pilot. The airplanes and the rules and the CFIs that you can train with and so on and so forth are a little bit different. So it's probably best to just go ahead and just go do a straight private. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
One of the keys would be if you were going to do sport pilot and you thought you wanted to do private later on, you've got to make sure that the initial instructor you use is a CFI and not a sport pilot instructor.
Yes.
Now they're trying to change that, but right now the hours you log with him would not be applicable for the private pilot.
Still logged hours, it's just the FAA has some really weird rules on things. That's why I'm like, if you know you're going to do the private, just go ahead and do the private. Yeah.
Talk more about the age. So you've got a 14-year-old who's interested.
Okay.
When can you really start?
You can start training anytime. If you're 3 years old and you can see over the panel, you can train at any time. But you're likely to start training about the ages of 14 or 15 is a good starting time. You're not allowed to solo a general aviation aircraft like we have here until you are 16, I believe. 16 is.
Yeah.
So if you're not allowed to solo it, everything up until solo is pretty much just time. Time spent in the airplane.
And I'm sorry, how old do you have to be to sit for the written exam?
You have to be 17 to get your private pilot license. So in order to take the check ride, your examiner is going to want to see that you are 17 years old.
What about the written?
The written you can take before then, but I would suggest you take.
It's good for 1 year.
Yes, it is good for 1 or 2 years.
No, it's good for 2 years.
So if you decide to take your written test 2 years before your 17th birthday, you've got to watch the timing on that because it's only good for that 2 years. So once you hit 17, if you're still within the 2 years if you haven't taken your written, then you're good to go. But if you took your written test 13 years old, by the time you're 17, you're going to have to take that written test again.
I got a question.
All right.
Since we are the Experimental Aircraft Association, why on earth would I want to buy an experimental aircraft instead of a certified?
Good question. Anybody happen to know why I would want to do that?
You can start by looking at that blue and white four-place airplane sitting out there on the ramp. That's Mr. Thomas's RV-10 that he built, but I could have turned around and bought that without ever driving a single rivet for around $200,000 ballpark. I could also go buy a brand new SR-22 from Cirrus and spend $900,000 for the same performance, the same size airplane, the same speed, the same comfort, and I get to have an A&P do my annuals because I didn't build it, but I can go in and I can learn all the things to do about the airplane and do a lot of it on my own, have an A&P look over my shoulder. You can knock off an annual in a day. Or you can buy a certified airplane and run into your annual inspection there, and it might take them a month to 6 weeks to get around to getting it all done and charge you 4 times the price.
Don't you get air conditioning for the extra $700,000?
You get turbocharged, you get turbocharged.
There are trade-offs to doing experimental versus certified. So certified is the FAA has gone through that factory and they've made sure that that factory builds it that specific way, and they have to conform to those building standards. An experimental aircraft is built by someone in their garage. So if you know the builder and you know that they're an excellent craftsman and they did 100% every last rivet perfect and so on and so forth, then heck yeah, experimental is definitely the better airplane. It's going to be cheaper to operate. It's going to be cheaper to own. There's lots of advantages there, but you got to be aware that it was someone who built it in their garage. If you don't know the builder and they took shortcuts in building that airplane, it wasn't caught when the FAA did their examination of that plane before they gave it an airworthiness certificate, you got a problem on your hands. So there's trade-offs, both pluses and minuses to having experimental versus a certified airplane. I know based on the fact that I've been building my own airplane and owning this certified airplane, that certified airplane is built to a lower quality standard than the one I'm building in the garage. But that's just me and me happening to know how that airplane was built. So your mileage may vary, but in all aircraft instances, when you're buying an airplane, have it checked out by an actual certified mechanic who is knowledgeable to you, that you trust that you trust what he's going to, as far as evaluate that particular airplane. If you hand him an airplane saying, I'm interested in buying this airplane, I found a Cessna 150 for $15,000 and I'm really interested in this, and he goes and looks at it and says, yeah, but that engine's got 3,000 hours on it. That means you're going to be buying a new engine set. So may not be the best thing to buy, or it may be fine. It just depends upon you, but make sure that you trust the mechanic who does that pre-buy inspection. And there are aircraft ranges and costs all over the place. You can buy the $700,000, $800,000 Cirrus SR S22, or you can buy an airplane like this, that will be 60 years old and a whole heck of a lot less money. So lots of different options out there. Or build your own. Any other questions?
Where do you find resources to build your own? Like, is it a company you're buying kits from, or is it just plans and you're machining it yourself?
There's lots of options there. There's catalog after catalog after catalog of different aircraft types. There's probably 2,000 or 3,000 different aircraft designs out there. A lot of people stick to a certain set name brand aircraft. Part of the reason why we are in existence, the Experimental Aircraft Association, is to help home builders be able to navigate the muddy waters that is building an airplane. So if you know you want to build a 2-seat fabric and steel tube constructed airplane, we'll probably guide you to, okay, well, you can build an Aranca, or you can build a Piper Cub, or whatever those types of airplanes are. If you're more interested in building a fiberglass airplane, we'll guide you in that direction. Or if you happen to know the specific airplane that you're wanting to build, but you just don't know where to get the parts, that's what we're here for. So that's part of the benefit of being an EAA chapter member, is we're here to help you with building your own airplane.
But some of the answer is you can get plans and have to build every part
Yes.
from scratch yourself, or you can buy like most of these that you see flying actually are kit build, and it comes with every piece you need, very detailed, almost Lego instructions. Take piece one, drill out this hole here at this dimensions. Take piece two, bolt to piece one, and it just happens to be a lot more pieces than a Lego kit. But it is something that you don't have to have a lot of skills for. I had never built an airplane before I built this one, and I built this one in 3 years, just following the plans, learning a lot from EAA and from other people online. But there's everything from some kits, you go to the factory and you get 70% of the aircraft done in 2 weeks sitting at the factory with several of their people helping you. There's a quick build, they're going to be a lot more expensive than if you just buy plans. You can probably buy plans for a stick and fabric plane for a couple $100, but you're going to spend 10,000 hours building it. Mine took 3,000 hours. You can do quick build kits that'll take less than 1,000 hours to build your plane. So sort of depends on your time versus your money.
Or just go buy one somebody else built, wait 5 years and pay the same amount of money. And save yourself all the grief and aggravation of putting it together.
It's fun.
Well, for some people it's fun. For others, we just want to fly them. We don't want to build them.
Right, you might tell them that if they really are interested in it, they might want to go to one of the big shows, Lakeland or Oshkosh.
Yes.
Everything is there.
Yes.
Every manufacturer's there. There are samples of all of these airplanes on the field. I think they said Oshkosh had 10,000 airplanes that went up that way this year. You can see everything.
Yes.
If you're interested enough to spend the money to build the airplane, you can spend the money to go to one of these shows. Everything's there.
Yep, Sun and Fun is in April. There's a light sport convention. I'm drawing a blank as to the name of the town. It's also Sebring. They're in January. Oshkosh is in July. There happens to be some other stuff out in the West Coast area. How much y'all are out in the West Coast, but there's events out there too. So there's generally something most of the year round. Bigger events. Even just your local air shows. There's often vendors and such at the local air shows too. Any other questions? Like, how do I know how to get from point A to point B? When I turn on my airplane, what the heck do I do? Anything. No?
I
Okay.
have all the questions.
Oh, go for it.
After you have the plane, what's the biggest cost? Is it the hangar? Is it inspections, maintenance?
So what
fuel?
I'll do is I'll go through the cost of me owning my airplane. Others mileage may vary, but it's definitely going to be dependent on the aircraft you have, the amount of flying you do, and where you're located. It's usually the big ones. So I bought the airplane. I spend probably $1,200 a year on insurance, and that's just because I have a lot of time in the airplane. When I first started, it was higher than that, $2,000 or so for the insurance. And then fuel costs. Fuel right now for this airplane is about $4.50, $4.75 a gallon, somewhere about that. And this airplane holds 90 gallons worth of fuel, so that's a lot of gas in there. My general fill-up is in the $300 range. I have hangar costs because I like to keep it in a hangar. Some people like to keep it out on the ramp. So a ramp space here at this airport is about $60. I think it's like
It was 60. It's still 60.
Okay. They're in that ballpark range. I know PDK is $90 a month for an outside parking space. For one of those blue T hangars you see over there, it's about $330 a month at this airport. PDK is in the $500 range. I'm sitting.
400 for the small ones and 500 for the
Okay, so yeah, they're a little bit pricey. So again, location plays a big role there. Every year there's maintenance costs affiliated with it. On average, you can expect to spend probably $2,000 to $3,000 just to maintain an aircraft of this age. You got a newer airplane, you're going to spend a lot less on your annual condition inspection. You got an older airplane, you're going to spend a lot more. Trying to think, what other costs do I have?
Taxes.
Taxes, yes. So I spend probably $500 to $600 a year in taxes on the airplane. It's a property tax. Trying to think, what else do I have?
Gas and oil.
Yeah, gas and oil. Oil is about $75 for a case of it, and you get 12 quarts in a case. So I burn about a quart every 3 hours flown, maybe a little less than that. So you do have to put oil in it. That's about what the costs are for me to fly that airplane. For John, he's spending a lot less. He's got a 2-seat airplane. It's experimental. He's probably burning 5 to 6 gallons an hour in that range,
More
or
like,
7.
well, I'm 170 miles an hour, burning about 7.5.
Okay, so I'm burning about 13 gallons an hour in this airplane. So I'm about 70% more of a fuel cost than he is, and he's going the same speed, same distances. Insurance-wise, you're probably about the same $1,000 range.
$1,000 for insurance, $1,000 for taxes.
Right, and the annual condition costs are like less than
Nothing,
$1,000.
pretty much. Charles, you're a good man. What you do is you do all the work yourself and have somebody inspect it and then get them to sign off if you have an experimental. If you have certified, you can't do that.
Right. If you have a certified airplane, you need to have an actual A&P. Well, you have to have, depends upon your A&P and IA. So IA stands for Inspection Authority. So you got airframe and power plant mechanics, and then you got the next level up in their, I guess, pay grade. So you got an airframe and power plant mechanic, which is the Wes and Charles here. And then you got IAs, which have an inspection authority on top of that. For a certified airplane, you have to have someone with an IA sign off that airplane every single year to maintain its airworthiness. In the experimental world, it just requires the A&P sign it off.
Did you talk about mission at all?
Actually, not too terribly much.
I know you probably hear me without this, but if you're going to buy an airplane, the first thing you have to figure out is what do you want to do with it. Like if you own a condo down in Destin, if it's still standing, I think all those are, but maybe in Panama City they're not. You can get down there in an airplane like that 4 times probably, 5 times faster than you could in a car because there's no good roads going to Destin. But if I wanted to go to Tampa to see my sister, in Annapolis to see my brother, it's a 9-hour drive either way, and it's a 2.5-hour flight. So if you're talking about using your airplane to travel, you can figure like 3 to 1, basic. If you have a reasonably, say, 150-knot airplane, you ought to figure on 3 to 1. If you're flying a 172, figure like 2 to 1. Plus you get all the joy and all the less grief and aggravation. And let's see, if you're using it for travel, go skiing and all that kind of stuff, you don't have to go through TSA, you don't have to get strip searched. I remember my daughter and I were in Massachusetts out at Martha's Vineyard, and the Cape Air flight was getting ready to go to Boston, and those people were all lined up behind the metal detectors, and my daughter and I just walked straight on through, got my airplane, took off and left. She thought that was pretty cool that we didn't get strip searched on the way to my plane. So there are a lot of missions you can use. If you just want to get up and fly around, go get yourself an ultralight. That's by far the cheapest. Beeline has like a $9,000 brand new ultralight you can put together. And there's a lot of really inexpensive ways to go. They have trikes, all kinds of things. But if you actually want to fly to go somewhere, and we were talking about this experimental thing, the only big drawback that I see experimental is if you want to use it for commercial reasons, you can't.
Correct.
You got to have a certified plane for anything you want to do, get paid for it.
Yeah.
Destination cost, like you say, flying there, what does it cost to land or store?
Very good question. So it's going to depend upon where it is you're going. Let's say that I want to fly from this airport and I want to fly to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. For whatever reason, I'm just going to go to the big guys. They're probably going to charge me a landing fee. They're probably not going to be too happy about me coming in the middle of the day either because I'm flying a much slower airplane than all the rest of them. But just because it's a major airport, they're going to charge me fees. I could, however, go to my sister up in Pennsylvania. She happens to live next to another general aviation airport up there. I can land, park my airplane, and there's absolutely no cost as far as the actual airport costs. They don't charge me parking fees, they don't charge me any ramp fees or any of that kind of stuff. Now, the way they make their money is on fuel sales. So they're going to expect that I buy some gas from them. And I generally want to buy some gas from them because for me to fly up to Pennsylvania, I'm going to have used a lot of gas. So that's the way they're making their money. Also, whenever you get to a lot of these airports, there's all kinds of other little perks. So most small airports will have a courtesy car. No charge to you. If you want to go, let's say I want to go to
Go to Thompson.
Go to Thompson, get some hamburgers at a local restaurant somewhere. You can get to the airport, get in a courtesy car, drive to the restaurant, bring it back an hour or so later, put a little gas in it for the next guy. They just leave the keys in the car. I mean, it's usually an old beat up car of some kind, but they provide the car for you. Now they figure if you've got an airplane, you're probably good for bringing the car back. So there's all kinds of other little perks all over the place. So the costs are generally pretty cheap. Another advantage, so you go to Delta Airlines, you want to get a flight ticket, you want to get a flight from here to San Francisco. You got to go to the big airport, you got to go through all the TSA checks, get in the airplane, fly out to San Francisco. And let's say that your actual destination isn't San Francisco. Let's say you wanted to go somewhere closer to Yosemite National Park, which is actually another 2 hours away. But the closest commercial flight you're going to get is into San Francisco. Take your own personal airplane, you're going to be able to land probably at an airport inside Yosemite Park even. So the airports that you can get to are a lot closer to your actual destination when you're flying your own small airplane. So
if you're flying into a larger city, you ought to expect to spend at least $10 or $15 a night for a ramp fee.
Yes.
But other than that, unless you're going to a Hilton Head or somewhere where they want to gouge you because it's a vacation
destination, yeah.
It's usually pretty cheap.
Most of the country, very cheap as far as getting into the actual airports.
Many places, nothing.
Yes.
Most of them will have deals with rental car companies that bring the rental car right to, where in fact sometimes the guys working the ramp will bring the rental car out to your airplane and load your bags into the trunk.
Yes.
Do you have to get like rechecks for your license every couple of years,
Excellent question. So, once you get your private pilot license, the license itself does not expire. However, you as a pilot do have to do what's known as or they call it flight reviews now, but it used to be known as a biennial flight review. You have to, every 2 years, get up in the plane with a CFI and have him re-endorse you to be able to continue on for the next 2 years. And really what he's going to check for is to make sure that you still know how to fly the airplane. It's nothing more than the very basics of what you did flight training class. So it's nothing like what the check ride is. You get in the airplane with a CFI, go up for an hour or two, do some stalls, do some slow turns, slow flight. To prove that you still know how to fly it, they'll sign your logbook, you're good to go.
By the way, you cannot fail a flight review. You may not pass one, but you can't fail one. In other words, you have to start all over. If the West didn't like what you did, he'd say, well, you were deficient in this area of the flight review. Go out and practice a little bit, and let's do it again, and then eventually you'll pass.
So once you pass, and it's just a matter of
Yes. Now there's another aspect to it as well, and that's a medical condition. The medicals are, there's 2 different ways you go about it. There's a basic med, and then there's your traditional medical. There's a third, second, or first class medical. The basic med is your driver's license is your medical. You just, as long as you got any state driver's license, they consider that to be your medical. You do have to still go to a doctor and get some sign-offs and such done. So they want you to go through and actually get physicals. But you don't necessarily have to go through an FAA medical exam.
Well, they can't do that starting out, though. You have to actually have a medical first.
Correct. You do have to start off with one. But after that, you don't have to worry about doing that again. Third class, second class, first class. So that's more if you're into like what I'm doing, I have a third class medical. But if you're going to be a CFI or an actual commercial, like a Delta airline pilot, you're going to have one of the third, second, or first class medicals. And those are, I'm sorry?
CFIs do.
Well, it depends on what it is they're doing, but CFI probably doesn't. But they're supposed to have, you want to have a second class medical for a CFI, but generally they're going to have a third class or higher. So you have to go to the doctor, you have to go to an FAA certified medical exam, of which there's many of them here in the Atlanta area. You have to go through a flight physical, and depending upon the class, he's going to go through different tests. So a second or a first class, you're going to have to go through a more stringent eye test than you would for a third class. You may go through a little bit more checks with your heart on first class medical. There's also time limits on each one of those. If you're going to get a first class medical, it's only good for 6 months. Then you got to go back again and do it again after 6 months. Third class medical, if you're over the age of 40, lasts for 2 years. If you're under the age of 40, lasts for 5 years. all kinds of different rules all over the place. But as far as keeping current as a pilot, you're going to have to worry about two things. You're going to have to do that biannual flight review, and you're going to have some form of medical currency. Another thing is regarding currency is if you're going to fly with passengers. So Randy just earlier this morning had to go through and do a 90-day currency thing because he had flown passengers in the past 90 days. So he had to go up, fly around the pattern in the airport, do 3 takeoffs and 3 landings, and that gets him current again, so now he can take passengers up. But if you have only flown by yourself or haven't flown the airplane in the last 90 days, you gotta go up and do 3 takeoffs and landings in order to be able to carry passengers with you. And the rules are a little bit different again for night. If you've done a night currency, 3 takeoff landings at night, it counts for a day, but if you've done it in the day, it does not count for night. So all kinds of other rules and weird stuff there. But once you get into your training, that's what your training is there for, is to teach you all of these rules. Anything else? These are all excellent questions. Yeah.
If you're wanting to go run a plane somewhere, you have a pilot license like a driver's license that you show somebody and say, hey, here, let me fly your plane, let me rent it?
So it's going to depend upon who you're renting it from. So let's say you did all your training with Bruce and you want to rent from Bruce. Bruce probably knows you, he probably knows that you're okay to fly his airplane, so you've done what's known as a checkout with Bruce with regard to his airplane. But let's say that now you're going to visit family out in Los Angeles somewhere, and you're just going to go to the local FBO out there and you want to rent an airplane. They're probably going to want you to do a checkout with one of their CFIs to prove to them that you know how to fly the airplane. And they're going to take you up for an hour, do basic, what you would do at a biannual flight review mostly. Go up, do some stalls, some slow flight, turns, prove to them you know how to fly the plane, and then they're likely to let you rent the plane and go do whatever you want to out there. But it's going to depend upon who you're renting it from.
Do you actually get a card, or do you have to provide them like a pilot's license?
Your pilot's license, I would probably bring your pilot's license in your logbook, just to say that you've got the hours that you say you have, but that's not all you really need. And your medical.
Actually is a card.
Yeah, your license is a card. It's a green card, just like nothing. I'll show you mine. It's just a green credit card looking thing, just that right there.
It's got Orville and Wilbur.
It does have Orville and Wilbur on the back. They did not sign mine. They probably did sign some of ours in the chat.
The other thing on renting a plane somewhere else is, if it's the same model, if you have a whole bunch of 172 time, the checkout may only be 30 minutes. But if they have a Diamond GA20, they may want to see you do 3 hours before you do a solo in it. But it all depends on your currency, your total hours, and your familiarity with their planes.
Yes. Another thing to mention, this airplane right here is a high-performance complex aircraft. It's a little bit more powerful than your normal trainer. So 172, the wheels don't go up into the belly. This one, when I take off, I bring the wheels up. I had to go through additional endorsements after I got my private pilot's license to be able to fly this airplane. It's a little bit faster. It just means that you guys stay a little bit more ahead of it whenever you're flying. It gets you to where I'm going faster, but at the same time, it's a little bit more complicated to fly.
Let's clarify a little bit about the support pilot and rifle stuff.
All right.
So support pilot was developed because there are folks that cannot get a medical. They may have a disqualifying condition or something. They may be in pretty good health, but there might be a medication they're on or something like that that the FAA does not like. They can get the sport pilot certificate just by self-certifying with their driver's license. They fill out a form, the FAA grants them to go ahead and do training just with the driver's license. They never have to go get a medical. If you are going to go for a private pilot, you will have to go get an initial medical. After that, Brian mentioned the basic med, something new within the last 2 years, that once you have that pass the medical with the FAA, you may never have to do it again. You can do the basic med and have your primary care physician go through the checklist, sign that off. You have to do an online course every couple of years, and the physician has to sign you off every 4 years, and you're good to go. You never go see the medical examiner again. So the sport pilot was developed for those folks that do want to go fly, but they might have some disqualifying condition. And if you're really interested in this stuff, you've got to go to the FAA website, or like the AOPA has a pretty good site, and do some detailed investigation of the minimum requirements for the third class medical and what would be disqualifying medications or things that you have that might cause you not to get a certificate. Because if you decide that you want to do private pilot, you go to a medical examiner and there's different, I don't know what to call them, but there's medical examiners that will let you take a summary that you pre-filled out online, and they will look at it first and tell you if you have something that's going to be disqualifying. There are those that will take this number that you get and they enter that number. Once that number goes in the computer, pretty much the only outcome of that is pass or fail. And if it's failed, then sport pilot is not an option for you anymore, because you have failed an FAA medical exam and you're done. Your dream of being a pilot would be ultralight at that point.
Unless, of course, you go and retake the test and pass it. Your most recent one has to have been a pass. If you failed it, you can't do sport pilot until you go and do another medical exam and pass it. Is really the rules there. Any questions regarding medical stuff? A lot of people think, well, do I have to have 20/20 vision? Just without glasses. You hear about that with fighter pilots and stuff. You have to have correctable for 20/20 vision. So you can wear glasses, but you have
only
to have
for
your
second
vision
class and above. 20/40 for third class.
Okay, so it's 20/40 for third class. And I don't know what the rules are for basic med.
20/40.
It's 20/40 there as well. Any other questions?
How many people are thoroughly confused and overwhelmed? Anybody other than Randy? How many people know a whole lot more about flying than they did before they walked in here? Anybody? All right, well, we're making some progress.
And everybody who just raised their hand, you're very much gung-ho, want to get in the airplane and go flying? Yeah?
Well, let's do it.
All right, so let's get some lunch, and then let's get organized to the point where we're getting in airplanes and flying around some. I think they've got everything ready over here, drinks, hamburgers, and hot dogs.
Have you got a list of
I'll look at it over on that first table. So pretty much anybody
Yeah, it's just when the kids have off.
Do you fly the Eagle?
No, I usually fly into front range. Eagle, we still know about the weather, and well, we usually go to Breckenridge, and so Eagle's almost the same distance back to Breckenridge as it is from the front range. So you may as well just stay out of the weather, potential weather problems.
How old are you?
14. Well, both of us are 14.
You're with your
Yeah.
Okay, what you can do is you can get in the back seat of the plane that the parent gets in, and you can do it with young Eagle. You have to fill out a form. But yes, you can fly.
Okay.
How's your flight?
It's good. No spots right now. But actually, one headset jack is not working.
Back?
Yeah, got a short. I messed with it some and there was a short in the wire. The wire is just long enough, so I'm gonna have to like snip and resolder an entire segment of the wire.
Or you could just go in there and rewire. You know how to do it.
Yeah, I just don't want to. Too much of a pain in the ass with routing and stuff. Splice it in. Yeah, I'm just gonna splice it in. It's just. You're all set. I don't fly with a 4-piece enough to where it's like, yeah. One of these days, when the weather gets better and it's not hot. So unfortunately, I think that date has hit. So maybe next week.
Oh, you did? That wasn't your first one, was it?
No, that wasn't.
From the original?
Well, I've got the 9 touch now. The day before my first flight, they announced the touch. No, Garmin. 7-inch vertical screens, and the day before my first flight, they announced the 10-inch touch screen. Come on!
That's actually
I debated for months. Garmin, I'm like, I can't decide which way to go. No, I think they're both great systems, and they were both about the same price.
I have a G1000.
Yeah, well, that price range is totally.
I don't know that it's more capable than the Skype. What I don't like about Garmin is they get you and then they don't let go. And they make you do the rest of it. Exactly. You can only do it from where they say you can do it, and they're going to set the price. I just put ADSB in. Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. I won't go for that. But I got the Garmin 430, so I'm tied in there.
Well, I'm sure he told me.
Yeah, I mean, although the experimental side of it really is
right.
now about the pricing and stuff. You get everything that IFR flavor.
If you want to do IFR, it's going to cost you.
Right. So I had the IFR on my 5. That's going to be a lot less than $650. On the blue and like RV10 out there. That's the same cost as yours. Right. Like, yeah. Did you get 475 or something?
Yeah, but I went to the amount that these plates actually change is not a lot. And as long as you somebody had the old one.
That's actually how I got introduced to the because some guy I was working with.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying though, is that if you have a paper plate, you're good. It doesn't have to be in your data. As long as you have the paper plate, you can if I was going to fly IFR,
Actually had your 40th birthday, I would strongly suggest just go get your done before your 40th birthday. So you won't have to go back and do it. Well, they won't change, but that's what it is. So just put more time to get don't
yeah. Well,
it's a,
on my van, no, I keep that back. I always have. Whatever it is.
Well, now they don't have to tell you a one-time update too.
Right.
$75. I thought about going to that. Generally, I'm only flying IFR a couple times a year, 3 times a year, and it's like, oh, if I'm going on a trip, and it looks like it's maybe IFR, maybe I just pay $75 and get the update there.
Yesterday.
Actually, I haven't updated my database probably in 6 months. I mean, I'm on a subscription, I just haven't had the need.
You use 4 Plus?
No, I use the Garmin Pilot.
Don't they send you updates?
Yeah, well, I get all the updates automatically on that, but as far as my actual GPS certified GPS,
it's just the card out. Plug it in.
Yeah, I never remember to take the card. It's like, yeah, I'll get it eventually. I mean, I had the current plate, but actually it'll stop. The 650 will stop allowing me to see the approaches, the GPS approaches after a certain. I think after they're 6 months old, it'll say, oh yeah, that approach is not available.
Not loggable hours, so to speak.
Huh? Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying. What they got you? They don't like that.
I mean, really, you're going to end up with a Garmin 430 or 650 pretty much no matter what.
They don't support the 430 more, so they Look at you and home. Right.
Same price though. I mean, I've looked, because mine will support either one either. I think the Jepson was a little bit more expensive last time I tried to update it. So it's like, I guess before we get slams flying, I might
right now, I'm driving every 6 months. My house is still there.
No one else is living in it. Yeah, that kind of thing.
So next week I'm looking at it.